But who do you think you are, girl, to lead me on this way? Hey, lies, lies, I can't believe a word you say. Lies, lies, are gonna make you sad someday. Someday you're gonna be lonely, but you won't find me around. Lies, lies, breaking my heart. Someday I'm gonna be happy, but I don't know when just now. Lies, lies, breaking my heart.
One other statement. Let me do one other statement, because it sounds like I hope you'll turn those. I hope we'll know the terms. I think the American people like to know what terms you use to determine what we might get, so that we could get all the information on Libya and find out what happened where these 4 Americans gave their lives. I think that's critical. In March, you also said this: your server was physically located on your property, which is protected by the Secret Service. Now, I'm having a hard time figuring this out because this story's been all over the place, but there was one server on your property in New York and a second server hosted by a Colorado company and housed in New Jersey. Is that right? There were 2 servers?
No, there
Okay.
was a server
Just
that
one?
was already being used by my husband's team, an existing system in our home that I used, and then later, again, my husband's office decided that they wanted to change their arrangements, and that's when they contracted with the company in Colorado.
And so there's only one server? Is that what you're telling me? And it's the one server that the FBI has?
The FBI has the server that was used during the tenure of my State Department service.
Okay. In your statement, you said which was protected by the Secret Service. Why'd you mention the Secret Service?
Well, because
here's what I'm thinking. Could a Secret Service agent standing at the back door of your house protect someone in Russia or China from hacking into your system? Why'd you mention the Secret Service agent?
out of just an abundance of being transparent.
Transparent. What's the relevance to protecting from classified information?
There was nothing marked classified on my emails, either sent or received, and I want to respond.
Use the right term there. Use marked. Yeah, that's the one. That's
Well,
what you
but that's
use the revised statement there.
Well, Congressman, there was a lot of confusion because many Americans have no idea how the classification process works, and therefore I wanted to make it clear that there is a system within our government, certainly within the State Department, where materials that is thought to be classified is marked such so that people have the opportunity to know how they are supposed to be handling those materials. And that's why it became clearer, I believe, to say that nothing was marked classified at the time I sent or received it.
All right. All I know is that's different what you said, Mark.
Update on the FBI's investigation of Secretary Clinton's use of a personal email system during her time as Secretary of State.
I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed.
They were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
I thought it would be easier to carry just one device.
She also used numerous mobile devices to send and to read email.
We went through a thorough process to identify all of my work-related emails.
The lawyers doing the sorting for Secretary Clinton in 2014 did not individually read the content of all of her emails
And deliver them to the State Department.
It's highly likely that their search missed some work-related emails.
So that the emails were immediately captured and preserved.
There was no archiving at all of her emails.
That was my obligation. I fully fulfilled it.
They deleted all emails they did not produce to state, and the lawyers then cleaned their devices in such a way as to preclude complete forensic recovery.
There were no security breaches.
It is possible that hostile actors gained access.
There is no classified materials.
110 emails contained classified information at the time they were sent or received.
I'm certainly well aware of the classification requirements and did not send classified material.
Even if information is not marked classified in an email, participants who know or should know that the subject matter is classified are still obligated to protect it.
At the time, this didn't seem like an issue.
None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, July 6th.
What just happened?
I mean,
what just happened? I mean, I don't get it. It's interesting. I was actually writing I was going to write a post for the Washington Post 2 nights ago and title it, "I Don't Get It," because everybody was saying, oh, she's not going to be charged. And I read the statutes and I looked at all the information. I saw the people who had been charged in the past for doing much less than she did. And then yesterday morning, Jonah Goldberg, in the National Review, had a column called I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't, this is like a scene out of Big. You're Tom Hanks and you're looking at this thing, and I don't get it. There are people that have been convicted with no intent for doing far, far less, and their only crime in the end was their last name wasn't Clinton, so they didn't walk. It's staggering. And then you look, Mika, at what's happened over the past week with the meeting between Clinton and Lynch. You look at the dangling of the job offer in front of Loretta Lynch in the New York Times. You look at them trying to hide the interview on Saturday morning of the 4th of July weekend. And then Comey yesterday coming out saying she's guilty, but we're not going to charge her with anything, which is, in effect, if you read the statutes, and Rudy Giuliani's coming on later today, you read them,
but
it was staggering what we saw yesterday.
Mr. Gowdy for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Director Comey. Secretary Clinton said she never sent or received any classified information over her private email. Was that true?
Our investigation found that there was classified information sent.
So it was not true?
Right. That's what I said.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for a little shorter answer, so you and I are not here quite as long. Secretary Clinton said there was nothing marked classified on her emails, either sent or received. Was that true?
That's not true. There were a small number of portion markings on, I think, 3 of the documents.
Secretary Clinton said, I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. Was that true?
There was classified material emailed.
Secretary Clinton said she used just one device. Was that true?
She used multiple devices during the 4 years of her term as Secretary of State.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
Secretary Clinton said neither she nor anyone else deleted work-related emails from her personal account. Was that true?
That's a harder one to answer. We found traces of work-related emails on devices or in Slack space, whether they were deleted or whether when a server was changed out, something happened to them. There's no doubt that there were work-related emails that were removed electronically from the email system.
Secretary Clinton said her lawyers read every one of the emails and were overly inclusive. Did her lawyers read the email content individually?
No.
Well, in the interest of time, and because I have a plane to catch tomorrow afternoon, I'm not going to go through any more of the false statements, but I am going to ask you to put on your old hat. False exculpatory statements, they are used for what?
Well, either for a substantive prosecution or for evidence of intent in a criminal prosecution.
Exactly. Intent and consciousness of guilt, right? Is that right?
Right.
Consciousness of guilt and intent. In your old job, you would prove intent, as you just referenced, by showing the jury evidence of a complex scheme that was designed for the very purpose of concealing the public record. And you would be arguing, in addition to concealment, the destruction that you and I just talked about, or certainly the failure to preserve. You would argue all of that under the heading of content, you would also be arguing the pervasiveness of the scheme, when it started, when it ended, and the number of emails, whether they were originally classified or up-classified. You would argue all of that under the heading of intent. You would also probably, under common scheme or plan, argue the burn bags of daily calendar entries or the missing daily calendar entries as a common scheme or plan to conceal. 2 days ago, Director, you said a reasonable person in her position should have known a private email was no place to send and receive classified information. You're right, an average person does know not to do that. This is no average person. This is a former First Lady, a former United States Senator, and a former Secretary of State that the President now contends is the most competent, qualified person to be president since Jefferson. He didn't say that in 2008, but he says it now. She affirmatively rejected efforts to give her a state.gov account. She kept these private emails for almost 2 years and only turned them over to Congress because we found out she had a private email account. So you have a rogue email system set up before she took the oath of office, thousands of what we now know to be classified emails, some of which were classified at the time. One of her more frequent email comrades was in fact hacked, and you don't know whether or not she was. And this scheme took place over a long period of time and resulted in the destruction of public records, and yet you say there is insufficient evidence of intent. You say she was extremely careless, but not intentionally so. You and I both know intent is really difficult to prove. Very rarely do defendants announce, on this date, I intend to break this criminal code section. Just to put everyone on notice, I am going to break the law on this date. It never happens that way. You have to do it with circumstantial evidence. Or if you're Congress and you realize how difficult it is to prove specific intent, you will formulate a statute that allows for gross negligence. My time is out, but this is really important. You mentioned there's no precedent for criminal prosecution. My fear is there still isn't. There's nothing to keep a future Secretary of State or President from this exact same email scheme or their staff. And my real fear is this. It's what the chairman touched upon. This double-track justice system that is rightly or wrongly perceived in this country. That if you are a private in the Army and you email yourself classified information, you will be kicked out. But if you are Hillary Clinton and you seek a promotion to Commander-in-Chief, you will not be. So what I hope you can do today is help the average person, the reasonable person you made reference to, the reasonable person understand why she appears to be treated differently than the rest of us would be. With that, I would yield back.
Revelations about Hillary Clinton's email scandal make clear we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. Hillary Clinton is desperate to cover up her crimes, and she has been unsuccessful, except that some people that head up some very important groups have said it's okay, even though it was never okay for others. That's why she deleted 33,000 emails, and she got away with it, sort of. That's also why she lied repeatedly to Congress and to the American public. It is impossible to figure out where the Clinton Foundation ends and the State Department begins. It is now abundantly clear that the Clintons set up a business to profit from public office. They sold access and specific actions by and really for, I guess, the making of large amounts of money.
If I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it. And we're going to have a special prosecutor. When I speak, I go out and speak. The people of this country are furious. In my opinion, the people that have been long-term workers at the FBI are furious. There has never been anything like this, where emails and you get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails. And then you acid wash them, or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done, and it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on that. I'm going to let you talk about emails.
Because everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised. In the first debate,
and the audience needs to calm down here.
I told people that it would be impossible to be fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything I want to do and how we're going to really make lives better for people. So once again, go to HillaryClinton.com. We have literally Trump. You can fact-check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact-checking, so I expect we'll have millions more fact-checking because, you know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
The forgotten men and women of America will be forgotten no longer. That is the heart of this new movement and the future of the Republican Party. People came to vote, and these people, the media, they said, where are they coming from? What's going on here? These are hardworking, great Americans. These are unbelievable people who have not been treated fairly. Hillary called them deplorable. They're not deplorable. Who would have thought that a word was going to play so badly? That's the problem in politics. One wrong word and it's over. She also said irredeemable, but we won't mention it. Thank you very much. We love New Hampshire, I can tell you that. I need to open with a very critical breaking news announcement. The FBI has just sent a letter to Congress informing them that they have discovered new emails pertaining to the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's investigation and they are reopening the case into her criminal and illegal conduct that threatens the security of the United States of America. Hillary Clinton's corruption is on a scale we have never seen before. We must not let her take her criminal scheme into the Oval Office. I have great respect for the fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice are now willing to have the courage to right the horrible mistake that they made. This was a grave miscarriage of justice that the American people fully understood. And it is everybody's hope that it is about to be corrected. So that is a big announcement that I heard 10 minutes ago. And I guess, obviously, most of you folks have heard about. And in all fairness, for all of the people that have suffered for doing so much less, including just recently, 4-star General James Cartwright, General Petraeus, and many others, perhaps finally justice will be done. With that being said, the rest of my speech is going to be so boring. I'm going to discuss our action plan to make America great again. We're going to discuss. Although we did have a lot of fun fighting Hillary, didn't we? Right?
Sorry, just to bring you back to that leader of that foreign country was not a member of your fan club. What do you make of a journalist who basically said that, in fact, President Putin hated you so much that it was personal, that he was determined to thwart your ambitions? Do you buy that?
Well, he certainly interfered in our election, and it was clear he interfered to hurt me and to help my opponent. And if you chart my opponent and his campaign's statements, they quite coordinated with the goals that that leader, who shall remain nameless, had. So yeah, look, I think Russia is a great country, and I think the Russian people are extraordinarily talented, and I think they are badly governed. And I think they have been denied their opportunities to really join the modern world in a way that will lift them all up. And I also think that when their president came back after having taken a time out to be prime minister, he rigged the elections for the parliament. And I was your Secretary of State, and we do speak out about rigged elections. That kind of goes with the territory, at least it did prior to this administration. And so I did say it was an illegitimate election and it had been rigged. And people, you know, I wasn't telling hundreds of thousands, even millions of Russians something they didn't know. So they go out into the streets in Moscow and St. Petersburg and demonstrate, and Putin blames me, that I'm the one who got all those people in the streets. So it kind of went downhill from there. And
it did. Before I ask you whether you would invited President Duterte to Washington or to the White House, can I just ask you something? Because again, I think many people in the room, look, whenever anybody says they're going to speak to Secretary Clinton, you know, your supporters are sad, they're devastated, they're disappointed, and some are angry And some say, you know, could it have been different? Could the campaign have been better? Could you have had a better rationale? He had one message, your opponent, and it was a successful message: make America great again. And where was your message? Do you take any personal responsibility?
Oh, of course. I take absolute personal responsibility. I was the candidate. I was the person who was on the ballot. And I am very aware of, you know, the challenges, the problems, the, you know, shortfalls that we had. Again, I will write all this out for you. But I will say this. I've been in a lot of campaigns. And I'm very proud of the campaign we ran. And I'm very proud of the staff and the volunteers and the people who are out there day after day. And it wasn't a perfect campaign. There is no such thing. But I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off. And the evidence for that intervening event is, I think, compelling, persuasive. And so we overcame a lot in the campaign. We overcame an enormous barrage of negativity, of false equivalency, and so much else. But as Nate Silver, who you know, doesn't work for me, he's an independent analyst, but one considered to be very reliable, you know, has concluded, you know, if the election had been on October 27th, I'd be your president. And it wasn't. It was on October 28th, and there was just a lot of funny business going on around that. And ask yourself this: within an hour or two of the Hollywood Access tape being made public, the Russian theft of John Podesta's emails hit WikiLeaks. What a coincidence. So, I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. So, did we make mistakes? Of course we did. Did I make mistakes? Oh my gosh, yes. You know, you'll read my confession and my request for absolution. But the reason why I believe we lost were the intervening events in the last 10 days. And I think you can see I was leading in the early vote. I had a very strong, and not just our polling and data analysis, but a very strong assessment going on across the country about where I was in terms of, you know, the necessary both votes and electoral votes. And remember, I did win more than 3 million votes than my opponent. So it's like, really?
I feel a tweet coming.
Well, it's fine. You know, better that than interfering in foreign affairs. If he wants to tweet about me, I'm happy to be the, you know, the diversion, because we've got lots of other things to worry about. And he should worry less about the election and my winning the popular vote than doing some other things that would be important for the country.
Just briefly, we're going to finish on some other stuff, but once the result was known, did you call President Obama? What did you say to him?
Yeah, I called President Obama, and I called Donald Trump. Yeah.
Did you have any message for President Obama?
You know, look, I mean, I was very proud to serve in his administration, and I said ad nauseum during the campaign, I did not think President Obama got the credit he deserved for saving our economy, for passing the Affordable Care Act. I just didn't think he got that credit. And so, look, among the, I mean, you know, again, you can read all about this excruciating analysis that I'm engaged in right now when I'm not in the woods walking with my dog. Is it therapy? I wouldn't say it's therapy. I would say that it is cathartic because, you know, it's very difficult to succeed a two-term president of your own party. That is a historical fact. And Democrats haven't done it since, Lord knows, like the 1820s or 30s, a long time ago. The Republicans did it once with George H.W. Bush succeeding Reagan. So it was, others may not have realized it. I always knew that it was going to be a hard election, but I thought that at the end of the day, we had made it clear. We were, you know, I wasn't going to appeal to people's emotions in the same way that my opponent did, which I think is frankly what's getting him into all kinds of difficulties now in trying to fulfill these promises that he made. Because, you know, healthcare is complicated. And so is foreign policy and other stuff that lands on a president's desk. I mean, if it's easy, it doesn't get to the president's desk. So the stuff ends up on your desk. And I'd obviously given a lot of thought about what kind of president I wanted to be, what I thought we could do. And I believe that we could build on the progress that we had made under President Obama. Now, that was not as exciting as saying, throw it all out and start over again. But I think it is how you make change in America that is lasting change, that is going to actually improve people's lives. So I was very proud of the policies we put forth. You know, I kept waiting for the moment. I've watched 1 million presidential debates in my life, and I was waiting for the moment when one of the people asking the questions would have said, well, so exactly how are you going to create more jobs, right? I mean, I thought that I thought at some moment that would happen. And I was ready for that moment. And if some of you who are maybe debate junkies remember, in that first debate, my opponent actually made fun of me for preparing. So I said, yes, I did prepare for the debate, and I'll tell you something else I prepared for. I prepared for being president. And I think, you know, it's not exactly headline grabbing. I understand that. But, you know, I can't be anything other than who I am. And I spent decades learning about what it would take to move our country forward, including people who, you know, clearly didn't vote for me, to try to make sure that we dealt with a lot of these hard issues that are right around the corner, like robotics and artificial intelligence, and things that are really going to be upending the economy for the vast majority of Americans, to say nothing of the rest of the world. So, you know, I'm now back to being an activist citizen and part of the resistance.
Let me go to the White House. Peter Alexander, this came from Sean Spicer. What more can you tell us, Peter?
Chuck, so let me just give you the information that we have. I'm joining your conversation in progress right now, so excuse me if I'm repeating myself.
It's okay.
This is the statement we just got from the press secretary, Sean Spicer, saying that the president informed Comey that he's been terminated and removed from office. President Trump, it says, acted based on the clear recommendations of both the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, as well as the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. The president, in a statement, says the FBI is one of our nation's most cherished and respected institutions, and today will mark a new beginning for our crown jewel of law enforcement. This statement from Sean Spicer adds, a search for a new permanent FBI director will begin immediately. We've also been given this letter. This is the letter that was written to Director Comey from the president, Donald J. Trump. It says it's essential that we find new leadership for the FBI that restores public trust and confidence in its vital law enforcement mission. He punctuates it by saying, I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. Chuck?
Peter, stick around here for a minute. Let me bring in Pete Williams. Grabbed him on the phone. Of course, the FBI is Pete Williams' beat. Pete, we knew Director Comey didn't have a lot of political capital with Democrats or Republicans these days for different reasons. But the timing of this is probably the most shocking aspect. Did the director see this coming?
Well, if he did, none of his senior staff did. I just got off the phone with a senior FBI official who says he had no idea this was coming. They are in shock there. I asked where the FBI director is, whether he's in his office today, and I was told that he's not there now, but this person didn't say where the FBI director is. We don't know what the reason for this is. The assumption here is that this is because of the handling of the disclosures during the campaign last year regarding Hillary Clinton. And the fact that it's a recommendation by both the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General is what is takes some of the pressure off the White House here, because if the president had done this on his own, while the FBI has publicly said that it's investigating any connections between the Trump campaign and the Russians and the influence in the election last year, that would have been an extremely volatile thing to do. But because of the fact that it had the recommendation of the new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who's recused from that, and the Rod Rosenstein, who just became the Deputy Attorney General, just recently confirmed and has a bipartisan background, has served under President Obama and other Republican presidents. That takes some of the pressure off the White House for what undoubtedly would have been a huge backwater.
Earlier this afternoon, President Trump called me and informed me he was firing Director Comey. I told the President, Mr. President, with all due respect, you are making a big mistake. The first question the administration has to answer is why now? If the administration had objections to the way Director Comey handled the Clinton investigation, they had those objections the minute the president got into office. But they didn't fire him then. Why did it happen today? We know the House is investigating Russian interference in our elections that benefited the Trump campaign. We know the Senate is investigating. We know the FBI has been looking into whether the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians, a very serious offense. Were these investigations getting too close to home for the president? It is troubling that Attorney General Sessions, who had recused himself from the Russian investigation, played a role in firing the man leading it. So what happens now? Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein sat in the Judiciary Committee and promised to appoint a special prosecutor at the appropriate time. That time is right now. The American people's trust in our criminal justice system is in Rosenstein's hands. Mr. Rosenstein, America depends on you to restore faith in our criminal justice system, which is going to be badly shattered after the administration's actions today. This is part of a deeply troubling pattern from the Trump administration. They fired Sally Yates. They fired Preet Bharara. And now they fired Director Comey, the very man leading the investigation. This does not seem to be a coincidence. This investigation must be run as far away as possible from this White House and as far away as possible from anyone that President Trump has appointed. Given the way the President fired Director Comey, any person who he appoints to lead the Russia investigation will be concerned that he or she will meet the same fate as Director Comey if they run afoul of the administration. The American people need to have faith that an investigation as serious as this one is being conducted impartially, without a shred of bias. The only way the American people can have faith in this investigation is for it to be led by a fearless, independent special prosecutor. If Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein does not appoint an independent special prosecutor, every American will rightly suspect that the decision to fire Director Comey was part of a cover-up.
I heard someone on Twitter say he fires people on TV. Well, he fired him on TV.
I want to make another point about how absurd this night is. The Attorney General, who is involved in making this recommendation, thought enough to recuse himself from the Russia investigation because he himself failed to disclose that he had meetings with the Russian ambassador. So at no time did he turn to the president and say, you know, it would be inappropriate for you to fire the head of the FBI when the FBI is investigating your campaign, by extension, your White House, for colluding with a foreign power.
That is itself absurd.
How is that absurd?
If you've ever run an agency that runs investigations, which I have, that person does not day-to-day run the investigation. They are not in charge of the investigation. They manage the personnel, and that's
I'm sorry,
it.
no. He's
And
the Attorney General of the... You interrupted
right.
me. I will finish my point.
This is not about
Mr. Cuccinelli,
You're
getting on talking
one at a time. We don't need to talk over each other. We have plenty of time. So you just stop, let him finish his point, and then join in.
You interrupted me to issue a talking point, and you're a political figure. I understand you want to do that. He's the Attorney General of the United States. He advises the president. He knew enough to recuse himself from the investigation. He should have been a grown-up and stood up and said that this was wrong. You know, people have said from the White House tonight, some of the talking points that you were starting to utter, that in fact Hillary Clinton would have done the same thing. Oh, I don't know. Well, it sounded very similar to what Kellyanne Conway said when you interrupted me. I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm speaking. You will have your chance. You've been brought on. You'll have plenty of opportunity. The White House is saying tonight Hillary Clinton would have fired Jim Comey too. I'm sure she would have liked to. I know for a fact there was some discussion of that when she thought she was poised to win. But she actually got very sage advice that you couldn't do that because of how nakedly political that would look. Apparently, there's nobody in the White House who gave that same advice to this president.
Okay, but you're all jumping to conclusions, and I think maybe, let's hypothetically assume all of your awful expectations are true, which are overwhelmingly represented in the discussion tonight. Let's assume they're all true. You will know that when the president announces his proposed replacement. That person, in light of all of the concerns expressed, some of them in a rather hyperventilated way, will be brought into even clearer focus when that person is selected.
Do you know who it is?
No, I have no idea. But it is absolutely incumbent on the president that he pick someone who both sides in the Senate in particular can view coming in as capable and with a track record of objectivity.
Should he call for...
Well, could the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server be reopened? Our own Catherine Herridge has some new reporting on that question tonight. Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. We'll get to that potential political earthquake in just a minute. But first, Democrats in Congress and their surrogates in the press spent all day muttering darkly about Russian conspiracies and demanding an independent investigation into whether Vladimir Putin secretly ran Donald Trump's presidential campaign. They howled and they barked and they did their best impressions of grave concern. But always at the center of it, that phrase, independent investigation. Now, there's a reason you kept hearing those words. Independent investigation is not a policy prescription. It's a talking point. It was formulated by strategists, disseminated by operatives, and faithfully repeated on television by hacks who have precisely zero interest in independence or in investigations, except when they're politically convenient. The whole idea is a sham, partisanship posing as patriotism. But let's take it seriously for a second anyway, just for fun. Democrats say they want to make certain that any Russia investigation remains above politics. Now, would allowing sitting members of Congress to appoint an investigator make the process more or less political? Come on, dumb question. And by the way, who would investigate it? Can you think of a single person who would be acceptable to both sides in Washington? In this political environment, no way. God himself would get hit with attack ads if he took that job. A so-called independent investigation wouldn't restore public trust in government any more than the Warren Commission settled public doubts about the Kennedy assassination. It's absurd. But happily, we don't need another investigation. We already have one. It's being run by the FBI, which, despite Jim Comey's well-deserved firing, still exists and is still considered the most professional investigative body in the world, maybe more so now that Comey has gone. Unless you think the entire FBI has been corrupted by Donald Trump during his 4 months in office, and if you think that, please seek professional help or switch to MSNBC, they are the team for the job. There is no other. Well, that would be obvious if the point of the exercise were to discover the truth, but it's not the point of the exercise, and it never has been the point. This is a political operation. Don't let him tell you otherwise. Now, speaking of investigations, thanks to Director Comey, last year the FBI ended a massive investigation of Hillary Clinton's email server without charging a single person. Now, Fox Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has some information about how that failure to prosecute went down inside the FBI. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Tucker. Contact called me tonight and pointed out that last summer, the FBI Director James Comey testified on Capitol Hill that the decision not to pursue criminal charges against Hillary Clinton and her team for mishandling classified information was unanimous among the FBI agents on the case. But the acting FBI Director today seemed to testify to something slightly different, saying morale took a huge hit.
There were folks within our agency who were frustrated with the outcome of the Hillary Clinton case, and some of those folks were very vocal about those concerns.
His critics say Andrew McCabe is partisan because his wife took $700,000 for a 2015 state Senate race in Virginia from Democrats, including a longtime Clinton aide, the Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. And a former FBI agent told Fox News that new leadership at the top of the Bureau could mean a new review of the Clinton case with a fresh set of eyes. Tucker.
So, Catherine, is it possible that the FBI could reopen this investigation into Hillary Clinton's email?
I don't get too far over the tip of our skis, but definitely if there's a new director, he can take a fresh look at the evidence and the decision-making. Because remember, FBI Director Comey was criticized for going outside of his investigative lane and putting on his prosecutor's hat and making that recommendation against criminal charges.
Interesting. Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, you remember last summer, former FBI Director Comey spoke about Secretary Clinton's mishandling of classified information.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
All of this, of course, was quickly forgotten by most people once the election ended, but last year there was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm among some for taking action. You'll remember this. Does Hillary Clinton still face potential legal jeopardy from the Department of Justice? Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, a legal watchdog organization, and he joins us tonight. Tom, simple question. Do you think it is possible that this case could be reopened under a new FBI director?
Well, I think it needs to be reevaluated not only under a new FBI director, but under the new leadership at the Justice Department. The Comey misdirected the investigation by suggesting that they needed to prove intent when, in fact, as he pointed out, common sense tells you that they mishandled it and they should have known what they were doing was wrong, which is enough for a prosecution. It's gross negligence under the law. And secondly, the Justice Department, according to Mr. Comey himself, he thought they were compromised so much so that he needed to play Attorney General in announcing whether or not she should be prosecuted or not. And so now the Justice Department is in a position to take a look-see at this. But you have to remember there are other investigations. The investigation into mishandling classified material has been shut down. But remember, there's a pending request from Congress to investigate whether Mrs. Clinton was truthful to Congress. Right. And then reportedly there was still this investigation going on related to her foundation and the pay-for-play allegations. So not only should they reinvigorate those investigations, if indeed they're still out there, but they really need to reevaluate what's going on with the classified mishandling of material, mishandling classified material, and really her taking records illicitly, destroying them, all sorts of crimes related to that. We can't trust that last investigation to have gotten to the bottom of it.
Well, and here's the key reason why, as far as I'm concerned. Hillary Clinton apparently was never questioned under oath by the FBI, and I've never understood that. James Comey, of course, led the prosecution, I believe, or the prosecution of Martha Stewart, who wound up going to jail for lying to a federal agent. Someone who'd been through that doesn't put the person he's questioning under oath. What would be the rationale for that?
Well, I guess the rationale is you're not allowed to lie to federal investigators whether you're under oath or not, but putting them under oath puts them on notice that this is a serious investigation. And by taking this lackadaisical approach where you're granting immunity to all of her associates, I think there's still an open question as to whether she was granted some form of immunity in order to be questioned. And then, of course, you've got the whole process infected by that terrible meeting between Bill Clinton and Attorney General Lynch less than a week before the interview of Mrs. Clinton, and less than a week about a week before Comey said that there's going to be no prosecution, or he would recommend no prosecution. This is why we need some honest folks, separate and independent. If you need an independent counsel, so be it, to take another look-see over all of this, so that the American people could be reassured that at least someone separate and apart from Obama partisans and a politicized FBI director has honestly and thoroughly reviewed the evidence and has decided whether or not they need to proceed either with a further investigation or they can rely on the prior decisions and just keep it shut down.
Would you be worried tonight if you were Secretary Clinton?
Oh, I still think she faces legal jeopardy. I mean, if the system's working, she still faces legal jeopardy. The Justice Department under President Obama protected her. The FBI director repeatedly misstated the law and suggesting they needed intent. They had plenty of intent. Let me tell you how bad the FBI investigation was. They were using Freedom of Information documents uncovered by Judicial Watch to question the witnesses. The witnesses didn't start getting questioned until we started talking about questioning these witnesses. It was something they didn't want to do. The Justice Department never wanted to have a serious investigation. And so we just need some honest prosecutors and investigators. And I believe the FBI rank and file will be happy to do a serious investigation, to be happy even if there's no prosecution, as long as there's a fair analysis in the end.
Right, because the appearance that powerful people skate discredits the entire system. Of course it does. Tom, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you, Tucker.
Look, he's a showboat. He's a grandstander. The FBI has been in turmoil. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. You take a look at the FBI a year ago. It was in virtual turmoil less than a year ago. It hasn't recovered from that.
Monday, you met with the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
Did you ask for a recommendation?
What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not.
You had made the decision before they came in the room.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation,
yeah, well,
so you had already made the decision.
I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was really
he made a recommendation. He's highly respected, very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey.
Let me ask you about your termination letter to Mr. Comey. You write, I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation. Why did you put that in there?
Because he told me that. I mean, he told me that.
He told you weren't under investigation with regard to the
I've
Russia investigation?
I've heard that from others. I think.
Was it in a phone call? Did you meet face to face?
I had a dinner with him. He wanted to have dinner because he wanted to stay on. We had a very nice dinner at the White House very early on. A dinner was arranged. I think he asked for the dinner. And he wanted to stay on as the FBI head. And I said, I'll consider. We'll see what happens. But we had a very nice dinner. And at that time, he told me, you are not under investigation, which I knew anyway.
That was one meeting. What was the other
First of all, when you're under investigation, you're giving all sorts of documents and everything. I knew I wasn't under. And I heard it was stated at the committee, at some committee level, that I wasn't. Number one.
So that didn't come directly from him.
Then during a phone call, he said it. And then during another phone call, he said it. So he said it once at dinner. And then he said it twice during phone calls.
Did you call him?
In one case, I called him. In one case, he called me.
And did you ask, am I under investigation?
I actually asked him, yes. I said, if it's possible, would you let me know, am I under investigation? He said, you are not under investigation.
But he's given sworn testimony that there is an ongoing investigation into the Trump campaign and possible collusion with the Russian government. You were the centerpiece of the Trump campaign.
And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha. To the happy home with trees and flowers and chirping birds and basket weavers who sit and smile and twiddle their thumbs and toes, and they're